What is going on, above average people? Joe back again with episode 2 of the Average Joe No More podcast. In this week's episode, we have Hannah Bronson, who is a music therapist from Austin, Texas, who works with the military and has done many, many different things in the realm of music therapy, which she will get into in the podcast. But before we kick into that, I just wanted to give a big shout out to everyone that gave positive feedback through episodes 0 and 1 of the podcast, who sent screenshots, who sent wonderful words to me. I really, really appreciate it. So let's get into episode 2 with Hannah Bronson. All right, Hannah, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you for having me.
So for people that don't know you, could you give like a quick my story or like a how you got to where you are today?
Sure. So I'm a music therapist and I have sort of lived in a couple different cities. So I guess I'll start with, I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. So I was born and raised, and, I did my training in that area too. And then I moved out to San Diego, which was a huge move. And it sounds like, Joe, you kind of did the same thing.
Yeah.
So I moved to San Diego, did my internship at Resounding Joy and MusicWorx, and ended up working out there for a couple of years, primarily working with the military population. And then in 2015, I moved out to the National Capital Region, and I started working at Fort Belvoir. And this was under the National Endowment for the Arts' new initiative called Creative Forces. So expanding creative arts therapies across the country to different military treatment facilities. And they were piloting them in the DC area. And I thought, hey, like this is pretty awesome to be kind of in the center of where everything's happening. So, I packed up my stuff and moved back across the country to the East Coast. Worked there for a couple of years, and now that they're expanding nationally, I'm working at Fort Hood in Texas and living in Austin. So been to a couple of different cities now, and it's been really exciting.
Awesome.
Yeah.
For those of listeners who don't know what music therapy is, can you give maybe a textbook definition of it, and then like a normal person definition of it?
Yeah, definitely. So music therapy is the evidence-based practice of using music to accomplish clinical therapeutic goals. And it's delivered by board-certified music therapists. So we are a credentialed profession. And we work in all kinds of different settings. It can be found in hospitals, in school settings, in nursing care facilities, in mental health clinics, kind of all over the place. So it's a growing profession. It's really exciting. And, if I were to just give my, straight, this is what we do in music therapy, it's just really using music as a tool for wellness. So how can you harness the connection that we all have as humans to music to, improve your quality of life?
Absolutely. What sorts of interventions and things do you do with the servicemen?
Yeah, so service members, men and women, have a variety of challenges that they're addressing, oftentimes post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain injury, some physical injuries, and can create a lot of challenges in their daily life. So a lot of them also have a pretty strong connection to music and have used it throughout their lives, whether it's on a deployment or, even before that, maybe they played music earlier in life and just haven't had a chance to do it since. So I work with them to find out what their goals are, whether it's, reconnecting to their family or themselves even, and doing that through music. We do things like active music making on instruments. So we have everybody pick up guitars and play like a 3-chord song by the end of the session. We'll do music for relaxation and mindfulness. We'll do songwriting. It's a great tool for, processing life experiences, and lyric analysis. So something that a lot of people do kind of on their own, but we'll do it in a group setting. So taking a piece of music and listening to it and figuring out what the artist is saying and how that relates to you and other people.
Absolutely. Yeah. So for those of you that don't know, I used to be a music therapist, and one of the things that really kind of helped help people figure out what music therapy was without being in it is like a story that I used to have. It's kind of like almost like, this is why I'm doing music therapy. Do you have one of those stories of like a moment where it was like some client or patient had a huge change through music therapy?
Yeah. It's hard to think of just one, but the one that stands out in my mind is a person I worked with, and I work in like a holistic treatment facility. So the patients come in and see a whole bunch of different types of providers, and this was someone who just had a really hard time and had a lot of physical pain, a lot of emotional pain, and was kind of sent to me after wasn't really making a lot of progress in other areas. So I sit down with him individually, and the first thing he says to me is like, I don't do groups. I don't want to be around people. I don't like going out in crowds. And I said, all right, cool. Well, that's fine. You don't have to, but let's talk about music. What do what do you like about music? And he said, I have kind of had this long-term lifetime dream of playing the drums. So
nice.
Got him on the drum kit, started playing his favorite songs, and I sort of mentioned to him the fact that we had a jam group going on, and he was like, cool, when can I come?
That's awesome.
So my jaw dropped, and I was like, sure, how about this week? Cool.
Absolutely.
And at that point too, the physical therapist saw him on the drum kit, and somebody who had so much physical pain and tension in their body just opening up and like just going to town on this drum kit. Like it was, like he was such a natural, and he actually ended up performing on a stage in front of like 100 people.
What?
And
oh my gosh.
Told me afterwards, like, I haven't been in crowds like that in years, and it was okay. Like I got through it, and that's music supporting someone in uncomfortable situations, and yeah.
Most of these people that you're seeing, is it a one-on-one basis or is it mostly groups?
I do a little bit of both, actually.
Okay.
So the individual sessions are great because they're really individualized, and we can kind of, I can help somebody develop a skill, whether it's, I really want to learn how to play the guitar and use this as a coping mechanism, or I really want to write this song. And then the groups are a great opportunity to sort of encourage people to socialize and connect with others through their, combined interest in music, and using that as a way to connect. So I think they're both great. I think there's a lot of benefit to groups and individual sessions.
With the songwriting kind of lyric analysis do you find a lot of the service members, they kind of gravitate towards certain songs, or is there, like, I remember when I used to work at a medical or Navy medical facility, that their Stained was a band that, or like Red Hot Chili Peppers were a band that like people really gravitate toward the service member. Is there any kind of bands like that out here for your people?
Absolutely. I mean, so I'm in Texas, and country music is life down here. So absolutely, like tons of country music, but then there's also, a lot of music out there that has sort of become, common soundtrack almost to like the recent conflicts, wars that were going on. Service members share their music, they bring their hard drives on deployment. Some of those artists are, Metallica. We have lots of metal music, lots of country, and then music that people listened to as they were younger. So a lot of 80s rock, hair bands, but then still everything from jazz to hip hop to even some classical music every now and then. It's so diverse. But
you said you also do songwriting with the military people as well, right?
Yeah.
Correct. Is there any certain themes that kind of are they're drawn to write about?
Oh, yeah. I think a lot of it is just, having moments of self-insight or self-realization, and moving from a place of self-hatred almost into self-acceptance and healing, and opening up and wanting to share that with the world. Songwriting is so powerful in that, it's really hard to get up and start telling your story, and especially when, we've been kind of taught to keep that inside of us, and music's one of the ways to do that and to connect with other people.
Absolutely. So this jam band you're talking about, do they have lots of opportunities to perform, or are there other kind of venues that your clientele have to kind of showcase themselves to the world if they want to?
Yeah. So, we've done this in a couple different places now, and you might even remember in San Diego, some of the performances out in the courtyard at Naval Medical Center.
Absolutely.
A couple different things. Like we've started monthly ongoing performance opportunities where patients can perform on post in whatever the military treatment facility is in a safer environment where it's their peers, other service members, even their providers are out there kind of cheering them on and getting that confidence to perform. And then even taking that out into the community and sharing that with, the greater San Diego area, DC, now in Austin. I'm still pretty new, but we're actually working on creating a network of arts organizations that are out in the Austin community, which is a huge music community.
Big music city, yes.
So exciting. So connecting service members with those opportunities, whether it's, I just sat in at a guitar group at a community music school for veterans, or, open mic nights, that kind of stuff.
Nice. And you have a pretty big event happening tomorrow, correct?
Yeah. So this is exciting. The National Endowment for the Arts is having these national summits in different states where they have creative arts therapists, art and music therapists. And it's bringing together local politicians, military leadership, the Texas Commission of the Arts, sort of planning this space for everybody to be in one room and talking about how can we use our resources to help service members, not only when they're in the military, but when they leave as well.
Absolutely. So I know just what the listeners are probably thinking right now is music therapy sounds so cool. I want to be involved. How did you get involved? Can you kind of break that down for us a little bit? Maybe how, why, and like how somebody else could get involved if they're musically inclined.
Yeah. So if you want to be a music therapist, it's a degree program and a certification that you get, including a clinical internship, which Joe and I did the same one.
Yep.
So basically what I did was I went and got my bachelor's degree in music and music therapy, which is a specialized degree track. And that includes, standard musical training and then also psychology, anatomy, and then supervised clinical practicum to learn music therapy techniques. And then you practice that out in the field in your internship and take a board exam. But you don't need to be a music therapist specifically to, help other people using music. And I think that's one thing that's really great about it is, you can connect with people through music and without having all the training in the background. You can't really call yourself a music therapist, but there are spaces to do that. There's ways you can build things in your community, whether it's, starting a local drum circle or, opening your studio to service members to come and record their songs or just connecting with other people through music.
How did you kind of grow up thinking you were going to be a music therapist, or how did that kind of come about?
Yeah, I didn't. I didn't know what music therapy was until I was a senior in high school looking for, what my next steps were. But I did know that, the most important thing to me in life was music and, had been just a really powerful tool for getting through life's challenges. And, I think a lot of music therapists say, I got into music therapy because I like helping people and I like music. And that's like the standard answer.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I thought about it a little bit more. And I think that what I like about music is how it connects us as humans. You don't have to be a musician to feel rhythm, to understand melody, to connect to a song. And that's just such a powerful force that, I wanted to learn more about it. So
absolutely. Do you have a primary instrument you kind of came in on, or for people that are looking to become a music therapist, do they need to be kind of like an all-in-one, play everything really well, or how does that work?
Yeah. So I'm a viola player.
Ooh, nice.
But I also sang all throughout school and played piano. So yeah, I studied viola as my primary instrument, and through our music therapy education, we also learn guitar, piano, voice, percussion, and have to demonstrate proficiencies on all of those. And then, of course, as we go through life as music therapists, we pick up other crazy instruments like banjo and ukulele and mandolin and stuff like that. So, yeah.
So you gave that story of that gentleman who learned to play the drums, joined the jam band kind of deal. When I was working at Navy Medical, everybody tend to gravitate towards the drums, which I found very interesting because a lot of the service members had PTSD, which I would think would be kicked up by loud noises such as that. But are people kind of generally drawn towards drums also where you're at? And kind of what are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But yeah, drums are so accessible because number one, you don't need any pre-existing skill to play them.
Very true.
And they're such a great release, like you said, they're loud noises. Yes. But if you think about, the environment that service members work in, and the lifestyle that they're kind of around all the time is this high adrenaline, auditorily stimulating environment. And if you come back from combat and you don't have that opportunity to sort of feel that powerful, release of adrenaline, like how are you going to do that? And a lot of people, it ends up being unhealthy ways like riding motorcycles down the highway at 100 miles per hour. But you can also access that through playing the drums. So it kind of ends up being one of those alternative coping skills and just, emotional releases.
Absolutely. Do you see a good amount of people, or is it a kind of a smaller group? Or
my groups right now, we have an intensive outpatient program, it's a 6-week program where service members come in for their entire day doing groups and sessions. And so I see groups of 7 people at a time.
Okay.
Which can be loud.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So we make sure we have earplugs, but everybody loves it. And yeah, I've worked with smaller groups. Sometimes you put 2 or 3 people together and form some smaller groups as well.
Other than music therapy sessions, what are they also receiving at Fort Hood? Right?
Yeah. So they have kind of the gamut of services at our clinic, and we have traditional primary care physicians. We have psychology, psychiatry, social workers, nurse case managers that kind of orchestrate all of this. Then we have, a rehabilitation line of service, so occupational, physical therapy, speech language pathology, and then also some of the alternative therapies. So we have a chiropractor, an acupuncturist, a massage therapist.
That's awesome.
And then music and art therapy.
Yeah. Do you ever work with the art therapists as well?
Yes, we do. And it's very interesting kind of having 2 creative modalities in one place, because the service members, things come up in those sessions that maybe don't in other places, and to see what kind of art is being created and then what kind of music is happening and putting those side by side is really enlightening, I think, for a lot of people.
Absolutely. So for a person that, let's say, isn't the most musically inclined but maybe wants to use music as a tool to make themselves maybe less anxious or just kind of improve their current state, what kinds of maybe music therapy techniques could they use to really help themselves?
Yeah. Well, I always tell people whatever way you can use music intentionally. So often we just kind of throw on the radio in the car or have it on in the background and not really think about how we're using it. But if you can pay attention to the types of music that make you feel certain ways and then harness that as a tool for kind of attaining those desired states. So I always tell people to make playlists for different things that they do, whether it's relaxation. You can always do deep breathing, progressive muscle relaxation along with that, or vice versa, energizing. So what kind of music keeps you energized? What kind of music keeps you focused? That's one thing. And then another thing that I love doing with patients, but I think is so accessible, is just creating a life soundtrack and picking, if your life was a movie, what would be on the soundtrack? And this can be music from, that reminds you of certain people or places that was important to you during certain events during your life. And music's so powerful in allowing us to access memory, and it can be a great tool for just kind of reflecting on your life and learning about yourself a little bit more, and then sharing that with other people.
Absolutely. So for these playlists, you're trying to kind of focus on one feeling, and then kind of building from there almost, or kind of just sticking in that feeling? Or
so it's hard because some of us think like, okay, so if I listen to sad music, that's going to make me more sad.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
But music can really help us transform and move through different states. So maybe you start there. Maybe you start there at that feeling that you're having in that moment, and allow the music to match what you're feeling.
Like validate almost how you're feeling.
Yeah. And then, gently kind of move towards the state that you want to be in. And that might be, okay, so we're moving from sad music to more gentle, like relaxation music. And then maybe put that positive song at the end of that playlist. So you're not going to just jump to that. You're going to kind of want to move through it gently.
Absolutely. Is this something you said you also did with your patients and military members as well, right?
Yeah.
What kind of general state do you think they're most stuck in? Is it like the sad or trying to become positive, or is it like a big gamut of emotions and feelings?
It's hard to pick one. I mean, I think a lot of it is just disconnection, like disconnected from themselves, disconnected from other people. And that could be that can manifest in so many ways. It can be anger, sadness, anxiety, all kinds of different things. But
you said all of the members you see are active as well, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. Does that mean most of them are anybody actually trying to get out of the military, or is it pretty much everybody's going to be, after those 6 weeks, are going to be thrown back into service?
Yeah, so it's different for everyone. A lot of the service members are that I work with are kind of career soldiers or Marines. I just work with soldiers now, but they're sort of there for, life until they can't do it anymore. And it can be a huge loss of identity to not be in the military due to an injury. So they're really motivated to get better. And then there's some people who have, gotten to the place where they're like, I've had enough. My body is not working with me the way I want it to anymore. And I want to take care of myself and I want to take care of my family. So for them, it's time, it's time to move on. But we're sort of there to help people through whatever process they're going through.
Absolutely. So before you worked with the military, what were some other populations you also worked with that other music therapists would work with?
Yeah. I did a lot of work with older adults with dementia, which I loved. It was such a great, I did a lot of that earlier in my career, and it was so much fun. I've worked in hospital settings. I've worked with at-risk youth. I've worked with substance abuse rehabilitation. I've done some in-home sessions with various people out in the community. Man, there's so many at MusicWorx. I always have to think really hard about it.
So true. With the older adults, we said most of them have dementia, Alzheimer's of some sort. What do those sessions look like?
Oh man, lots of singing, lots of instrument playing, lots of reminiscing, kind of allowing people to access memory through music and using it to connect again with other people. And, there's a lot of things happening in the brain when we're listening to and playing music. And, for some people who even forget who they are, forget who's around them, forget their family members, you can play that song. And, with the skill of having a music therapist nearby, kind of help them connect to the people around them and, their past memories.
So it's almost like the music is uncovering these things that were once lost almost.
Yeah.
Wow. So you said you also worked with at-risk youth. What would those sessions look like?
That was fun. There was a lot of drumming, again, a lot of instrument playing, a lot of just having fun and being kids, right? If you think about how stressful it could be if you go home every day to a difficult home environment, and those kids have to grow up really fast. And I think, music therapy can be that place where they can be kids and just play and explore and have fun.
Absolutely. So you said that even if you don't want to become, let's say, a board certified music therapist, but wanted to maybe let's go with drum circles to kind of bring that music therapy experience to other people. How would you go about facilitating that? Is there a way to kind of just start one, or how would you go about facilitating that?
Yeah, there are actually a lot of trainings out there, and I've come into contact with a few of them on the West Coast. If I remember correctly, Christine Stevens is someone who does a lot of drum circle facilitation workshops. Remo, I think, has some kind of community music center where they do a lot of drum circle facilitation. I'm also familiar with Jim Donovan. He's actually from the Pittsburgh area and does some rhythm retreats and teaches people facilitation skills. And it's kind of all over the place. I bet if you go online and Google, drum circle facilitators training, you'll find some in your area. And there's other kinds of trainings out there too, about how to use music intentionally for, in medical settings, people go in and perform bedside and things like that.
One of the things about music therapy that people tend to get confused on is just generally like what is music therapy versus what is not. Could you maybe clear that up a little bit? Because I know personally, being a former music therapist, that a lot of the times we would have people that would pretend, like not really pretend, but think they were music therapists by just going in and maybe playing a show for older adults or any sort of things like that.
Yeah. So it's tricky, right? Because a lot of times music can be therapeutic without being music therapy. And the number one, I guess, criteria is that it's delivered with a board certified music therapist. And, you know, there's a huge continuum in between that, right? Like there are things that even music therapists do that are more recreational than others. But music therapy is driven towards goals, towards functional outcomes, really intentional uses of music that are individualized for the patient. So we're not just going in and strumming a guitar and seeing what happens, but we're watching the patient's response. We're helping them process maybe difficult moments that come up, because music, you know, can make you feel good, but can also, there can be a lot of painful things that come up. So having that skill is really important. But again, there are people out there in the community doing really awesome work. And I think, you know, understanding what music therapy is and what it isn't, and acknowledging that, and sort of honoring that there can be this continuum of care, right? So like when I'm done seeing service members and they're not doing music therapy anymore, but they want to access that same kind of healing through music, there's great places out in the community that they can go to that aren't music therapy, but offer that same kind of healing.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you find yourself borrowing from other modalities while doing music therapy, if that makes sense?
Yeah. I do. So I practice yoga as, you know, part of my own self-care. And I also have the opportunity to co-facilitate a yoga group every week. So we do combined relaxation yoga with live music. And then I can also pull some of that into my sessions, right? So I can reinforce how to do deep breathing, reinforce these skills that they're learning in other places through music, which is really awesome. And then another thing that I've been doing recently is treating auditory processing disorder, which is something a lot of service members have. And it's really misunderstood.
Yeah, what is audio processing disorder?
So basically, it is when there's a brain injury, and this can also be developmental too, but your auditory processing system, which is how we interpret sound in our brains, not just in our ears, can be disrupted, and it can result in, you know, mishearing words, not being able to pick out sound and noise. And traditionally, speech pathologists treat this. So we've been developing a music therapy protocol using speech techniques, and we're working together in kind of a co-treatment way, but we're doing it through music, and we're sort of helping them recover that lost function.
One of the things I think the best thing I may have learned in college and in music therapy, and yoga ties in with this too, is proper breathing. And not very many people know how to proper breathe. And me, with my fitness background, I know when people improperly breathe, you end up getting a lot of shoulder, neck, all that sorts of pain. Can you kind of give like a 1 minute run through of like how to breathe correctly?
Yeah. So I guess number one thing is the diaphragm is really important. And so often when we breathe, we kind of tense up our shoulders and tense up our necks and do this kind of deep inhale, when really that just makes me feel tense just doing it right now. Really want to inhale from our diaphragm and feel like the expansion, and over time practice slowing down your breath. So doing, you know, a count of 4 inhale and a count of 4 exhale, and then over time lengthening that to kind of slow down your breathing, and in turn activate your parasympathetic response, which is going to make you feel more relaxed, less anxious, all kinds of good things.
You could probably also combine that with music as well, kind of slower music maybe with breathing, or music for relaxation, I know, is something we were taught at MusicWorx. Can you kind of get into that a little bit?
Yeah, so music's super powerful because it has this effect on our physiological responses without us sometimes even really knowing it. So it can lower our heart rate, slow down our breathing. We use it intentionally with the music. Say the rhythm of what you're playing on guitar, or you might remember the happy drum, my favorite. It's a melodic drum. Can allow your body to kind of time that breathing and access it quicker without having to think so hard about it. and it comes more naturally. And the types of music is important, right? So we all like different sounds. We all like different instruments. So I do a lot of inquiring about my patients, what they like to hear, and then tailoring it to them. So, for some people, piano might be more relaxing, and you can kind of slow down to, I think, between 60 to 70 beats per minute is ideal for slowing down your heart rate, and then helping them get there through music.
So, Hannah, as we kind of get closer to our end here, if somebody wants to reach out and contact you, maybe find out a little more about what you're doing, or is interested in maybe becoming a music therapist, is there a good channel to reach you out on?
Sure. You can always send me an email. My military email is Hannah, HANNAH, .Bronson, BRONSON.CTR@mail.mil. So yeah, feel free to reach out. And the other place that might provide some good information about what we do with the military is on the National Endowment of the Arts website, which is arts.gov. If you search Creative Forces, there's a lot of good information about the expansion project and kind of where we're taking it with research and community too.
And for listeners that really want to take this into their lives, it's really the playlist you said, maybe do some drum circles, but it's really intention. I think I heard was a good word, just music with intention. Can you get into like a little, like as we kind of wrap up there?
Yeah. Music with intent. I mean, that pretty much sums it all up. But yeah, I think living with intention in general is really important. And, our lives are so fast paced, and we don't often slow down and kind of take time for ourselves. And it can be hard to get to a yoga class every day, and it can be hard to get to the gym every day, and it can be hard to do X, Y, and Z for your self-care practice. But, we all have cell phones on us that can play music. We all have access to this really powerful tool, and just harnessing that for yourself, I think.
Absolutely. Well, Hannah, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it. And once again, if you guys want to speak with Hannah, make sure to reach to her out on her email or on your Instagram too as well, right?
Oh, yeah. At HB40290.
All right. I love it. All right. Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you, Joe.
All right. That is it for episode 2 of the Average Joe No More podcast. If you all enjoyed what you heard, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share, do all those things that really help the podcast out. Also, make sure to give it a 5-star review on iTunes. That really helps the podcast take off and go places. You can keep up with Average Joe No More news and all things Average Joe by going to averagejoenomore.com or simply following my Instagram along at Average Joe No More. Thank you, guys.